UFC Fight Night at Vegas took place last night, and it was an amazing event with some amazing fights throughout the card, but it leaves us with the same question that we are left with every single time a card is over, which is, what's next for the fighters on the card? I'm going to be going through the entire card, telling you what's next for the fighters on the card, and basically giving them free career advice here. I really should be getting a cut from their management, because I guarantee you their management is going to be watching this video very closely. Let's start with the early prelims. Actually, fuck that. Let's start with the main event. We're getting interesting straight away. End with the early prelims, going through every single fight on the card, telling you what's next for each fighter, winner and loser of each bout. Gilbert Burns should take on Kamaru Usman next. I'm 100% sure of this. I don't see any other time that Gilbert Burns is going to be as big of a name that he is now, because he's coming off one of the most impressive performances in his entire career, a dominant win over Tyron Woodley, and I'll tell you why Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman makes sense. I feel like Masvidal versus Usman should be next, but you know what? They're having a little bit of a hissy fit over some money situations, so that's not going to be happening next. Kamaru Usman is going to be looking for a new opponent. It's not going to be Leon Edwards, because Gilbert Burns just beat Edwards' resume at 170. It's not going to be Colby Covington, because he just beat Colby Covington. It's going to be Gilbert Burns, I feel. They train at the same camp. I don't see any way that Kamaru Usman could decline Gilbert Burns and still walk around his camp like nothing happened and still be friends with Burns. I feel as though a great way to market a fight between... It's very difficult to market a fight with Kamaru Usman, I'll tell you that much for sure, because he's so dominant, other than his fight with Colby Covington, that it's pretty hard to sell any kind of threat to the title whatsoever. So what better way to sell a fight with Kamaru Usman than selling him against a guy who's beaten Woodley in a similar way that he did, but on short notice? That sells to me. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's a phenom in the jiu-jitsu world. He's amazing on the feet as well. I think Gilbert Burns poses a whole bunch of threats, and I think that now that Gilbert Burns has beat Tyron Woodley, the fans realise that Gilbert Burns is posing all kind of threats to Kamaru Usman, and I feel like that's actually going to be a very entertaining fight. It's not the biggest fight in the world between the biggest names, because Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns are like the two lesser names in the top 5, other than Leon Scott, of course. Leon Edwards, fucking hell, Colby's really infiltrated my language. Either way, they're the lesser known names in the top right now. You kind of wanted Woodley to win. You need Colby around. You need Masvidal around. But for now, while these bigger names are not fighting for the title, let's build these two lesser names with a title fight between each other. Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns would be amazing. Would be an amazing fight, and the winner of it will only be a bigger name than they were before. Plus, that's the main selling point. Gilbert Burns just did what Kamaru Usman did to Tyron Woodley. Maybe not as effectively, but he did it on short notice. I think that's the only selling point you can have, because what are you going to say about Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman? Leon Edwards lost to Kamaru Usman, but he beat these other guys in close decisions that aren't Kamaru Usman, that Kamaru Usman also dismantled in Rafael dos Anjos. That doesn't sell to me. And the Masvidal fight, you know, they're not going to do that one. That one does sell to me, but either way, Masvidal doesn't want it. Usman's looking for a bit of money as well. They're both in the wrong. Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman should be next. Moving on down the card, Tyron Woodley, the loser of the Gilbert Burns bout on the main event. Here's some things. Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley should be next. It's the fight that I've wanted to see for the longest time, and for the longest time, I wanted to see it with a belt on the line. It doesn't look like that's going to be happening. I just want to see it before everything's all said and done. I don't want to see it more than I want to see Khabib versus Ferguson eventually. However, the promo's been written. The beef is all there. Colby Covington might not even have to do any media for this. I just smashed the TV really fucking hard. Sorry about that one. Colby Covington might not have to do any media for this fight with Tyron Woodley. Like, he's already done it all. Like, there's nothing he has to do here. So if Tyron Woodley's looking to get back in there against a top contender and earn himself a way back into the title picture, which a win over Colby Covington certainly does, Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley's the fight to make. Here's the thing. Is Tyron Woodley going to be fighting some more? He sounds like he is. I think he should retire, because it seems like he's falling in and out of love of the fight with the fight game, to be honest with you. I don't like a guy who doesn't look too motivated, which is what I saw with Tyron Woodley in those 4th and 5th rounds against Gilbert Burns. He looked like a man who was trying to survive and not a man who was trying to turn the tide and win a fight against Gilbert Burns. But Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington will always make sense, regardless of whereabouts they are in the division. That fight's always there. The beef is real. I like it. Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington. If Tyron Woodley wants a way back into the title picture, and same with Colby, a win over each other is what they need. I think Colby Covington would annihilate Tyron Woodley. I'm just going to say that. Watching Gilbert Burns versus Woodley, I'm real confident in Colby Covington's chances. But either way, Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington is definitely a fight that can happen next. I'm surprised that we haven't heard much from Colby since watching Tyron Woodley lose. I'm sure if Tyron Woodley won, Colby would be going after him. But now Tyron Woodley's lost. Little bit of silence from Colby Covington. Maybe he's concocting up this massive tweet just ready to completely destroy Woodley's career and set up a fight between them. But that's the fight I want to see next. Let's get on to the rest of the card though. Now we're done talking about the main event. The rest of the card, not the biggest names in the world, but some young talent. Augusto Sakai versus Blagoy Ivanov wasn't the most eventful fight. There were some weird moments in there, some controversial moments with the cage grab. I didn't think it was that bad. I made a whole reaction video about it that I just stretched out. But either way, let's talk about the fights that need to happen next. Augusto Sakai, in my opinion, should take on the winner of Abdurakhimov. Shamil Abdurakhimov versus Cyril Gane. They are fighting each other, I believe, in a month from now. So their schedules are going to actually tie together quite well. I feel like Augusto Sakai versus the Abdurakhimov, the Gane winner. That's so fucking difficult to say. The Augusto Sakai should be looking to take on the winner of Abdurakhimov versus Gane. I feel like that's a great opponent for him because the winner of Abdurakhimov versus Gane have an easier name. I swear to God. The winner of Abdurakhimov versus Gane will be in the rankings. Abdurakhimov is already ranked. Gane, I believe, is just in the rankings, so they're going to be in a good position. I feel like it's a great career progression for Augusto Sakai to take on the winner. And for the loser of that bout, Blagoy Ivanov, maybe Junior Dos Santos too. The rematch. The first fight went 5 rounds. It was a main event. I don't know why Blagoy Ivanov seems to be getting these amazing spots on the cards. He must be some kind of superstar wherever he's from that I just don't know about. But either way, Blagoy Ivanov versus Junior Dos Santos 2 at this moment makes some level of sense. And if Blagoy Ivanov does beat Junior Dos Santos, then guess what? Junior falls down the rankings. Blagoy moves up. And then via osmosis, so does Augusto Sakai and the Cyril Gane Shamil Abdurakhimov winner. Everything shuffles around in the division when you make matches like this. Blagoy Ivanov should be looking to get a rematch with Junior Dos Santos and turn around reasonably quickly because I know that Junior is eager to get back in there. I'd look forward to that fight. Moving on down the card. The fight of the night, of course. Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlyle was an amazing fight. I thought it could have gone to Spike Carlyle, so I've got some interesting matchups for the pair of them. Billy Quarantillo, in my opinion, should be looking to take on Grant Dawson, a dangerous grappler in the featherweight division. Billy Quarantillo is a great grappler himself. He likes to be on top. He likes to have top control. So does Grant Dawson. Who's going to get top control? Who's going to be able to recover when they're on bottom? I'm interested by that matchup. Both guys, I feel like, need one more win before they're really looking to jump up the rankings into those top 15 areas. Billy Quarantillo versus Grant Dawson makes sense to me. Moving on, Spike Carlyle should take on Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa coming off a loss to Bryce Mitchell, but still coming off a loss, high up the rankings, a respectable name, and a lot of people were going to judge Charles Rosa by his performance against Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is a savage. I told you he was going to dominate Charles Rosa, but Charles Rosa himself is not some chump that just got destroyed by Bryce Mitchell. He's a guy who gave Shane Burgos everything he could handle until that third round where Burgos started to take over. Charles Rosa's a beast. I think a fight between him and Spike Carlyle, there'll probably be some shit talking back and forth because I know Charles Rosa likes to talk a little bit of shit nowadays. Spike Carlyle versus Charles Rosa makes sense to me. I think it would be chaos for 3 rounds. A lot of people don't recognize Charles Rosa after his fight with Bryce Mitchell, but he's actually pretty good on the feet as well, and he throws some wild stuff, so I'm sure there'd be some wild exchanges there. Spike Carlyle versus Charles Rosa makes ultimate sense to me. Moving down the card, Roosevelt Roberts took on Brock Weaver on the main card. Amazing performance. Roosevelt Roberts showed himself as a new star. Brock Weaver just paddling along right now. Not really sinking, not really swimming, but just kind of paddling in the ocean, not really knowing what's going on. But either way, I've got some matchups for the pair of them. Roosevelt Roberts called out Matt Frevola. I love that fight. I'm going to assume that Matt Frevola beats Frank Camacho because I think that's going to happen. And I assume he's going to be a huge favourite in that fight. Roosevelt Roberts versus Matt Frevola versus Frank Camacho winner. If it's Matt Frevola, not really if it's Frank Camacho, but if it is Frank Camacho. Listen, Roosevelt Roberts said he doesn't even matter if, Matt Frevola wins or loses against Frank Camacho. He wants to fight anyway. I'm down regardless of what happens in the Frevola versus Camacho matchup. Roosevelt Roberts versus Matt Frevola would be ideal. That's the fight I'm planning to make next. Brock Weaver. I'm acting like I have some kind of power here. Hopefully I do. I'll be a matchmaker one day. You watch. Brock Weaver should take on Austin Hubbard. Both great guys in a great division. Not great guys, sorry. Both mediocre guys towards the bottom half of the division. Obviously, Austin Hubbard coming off actually a close lost to Marco Madsen, who's a beast, but then again, Marco Madsen was injured going into that fight as well. Austin Hubbard, coming off a loss. Same story with Brock Weaver. I feel like the pair of them could be matched up together on some kind of prelim, high up the prelims on some kind of card. I'd watch that fight. Loser goes home. Brock Weaver versus Austin Hubbard. Loser goes to Bellator. Winner sticks around in the UFC and shows that they can still make it in the division. Brock Weaver versus Austin Hubbard. Roosevelt Roberts versus Matt Frevola. Moving on. Mackenzie Dern also earned a nice submission win over Hannah Cifers on the main card. Mackenzie Dern versus the Torres versus Brianna Van Buren winner, which is taking place next month on the 20th of June. That's an amazing fight. If it's Tisha Torres, that's a big name inside the rankings for Mackenzie Dern to take on next. I'd be down to watch that fight. Trust me, in many different ways. I'll get the lube ready. Hannah Cifers, on the other hand. Yeah. Unimpressive. That's 2 losses in a row. I feel like she should maybe take on a fight with Emily Whitmire, who's coming off a loss, and they're quite close together in the rankings as well. Both floating around that number 30 spot. Hannah Cifers versus Emily Whitmire makes sense moving on from that shit. Either way. Caitlin Chookagian versus Antonina Shevchenko took place to headline the prelims. Amazing fight. This one maybe should have been on the main card even, because it's a good fight. Top contenders. Here's what we're going to do. Jessica Eye versus Cynthia Calvillo is the main event. Is the main event of a fight night in 2 weeks on the 13th of June. It's not a joke. It actually is the main event of a fight night. I'm being serious. You're awake. But while it is the main event, there's nothing we can do about it. We can sit here and bitch all we want, but at the same time, the winner of that fight, if they do it in impressive enough fashion, is going to get a lot of hype just from being the main event and a lot of attention from being the main event as well. So I'm actually decently okay with it, because I'm going to complain about these girls getting high positions up on the cards. Main event is a little bit too far in my opinion. I could allow a co-main event. Even then I would be a little bit disgusted, but even still, I can't complain that Shevchenko has no interesting matchups, and then at the same time complain about these girls in her division that are in the top 3 being put high up on cards. So either way, let's make the most out of this fight being in the main event and do the winner of Aya versus Calvillo taking on Caitlin Chookagian for the next title shot. I feel like that makes a lot of sense, and the winner will be on a 2-fight win streak, looking to get a rematch or a new fight with Shevchenko. If it is Cynthia Calvillo, that'd be an amazing fight in my opinion. Moving on. Antonina Shevchenko lost. She got dominated. I feel like she should be looking to take on Ashley Evans-Smith. I don't really give a fuck, but Ashley Evans-Smith is just someone outside the rankings in the women's flyweight division that's coming off a loss. I don't really care too much about this one, but, you know, they're both coming off losses. Let's see if Antonina can bounce back. I'm pretty sure she will. It's a winnable fight for her. Let's make it happen. Antonina Shevchenko versus Ashley Evans-Smith. Daniel Rodriguez fought Gabriel Green on the prelims. I feel like he should take on Miguel Beza. 2 welterweights. Young welterweights, new on the scene, 2-fight win streaks. Both have wins over veterans in Tim Means and Matt Brown. They're both in very similar situations. Daniel Rodriguez versus Miguel Beza sounds like an amazing idea to me. The winner will then be on a 3-fight win streak and maybe be looking to get a fight to then get them into the rankings. They're about 2 fights away from earning a ranked opponent, but right now they're on a really good track. Daniel Rodriguez versus Miguel Beza. Miguel Beza only fought a few weeks ago as well, so they're on a similar schedule. They'll both be looking to return around the same time, I'm sure. Daniel Rodriguez versus Miguel Beza makes a whole bunch of sense to me. And Gabriel Green, I don't know, a lightweight coming off a loss. Who's a lightweight coming off a loss? Yancy fucking Medeiros. They're both tough. It'd be a scrap. I don't know if Yancey's still in the UFC because he is on a 3-fight loss streak right now, sorry. If he is still in the UFC, do Gabriel Green versus Yancy Medeiros. Loser goes home at lightweight. Feel like that's a decent matchup. Either way, moving on down the card, Jamahal Hill earned a huge victory over Klidson Farias Diabriu. Amazing victory, destroyed him in the first round. I think a great matchup for Jamahal Hill. I did mention in my initial recap that Kutalaba would be a great matchup for him, but Kutalaba's looking at OSPs, he's looking at Jimmy Cruz, he's looking at a rematch with Ankleev, although that might not happen for a while. He's looking at these guys a little bit further up the rankings right now. Who's his name? Jamahal Hill. Apparently his name's Jamal Hill, but he has a H in the middle of the 2 A's. Don't put it there if you don't want me to pronounce it that way. Jamahal Hill versus Da Un Young would be an amazing fight. Both guys 2-0 in the UFC right now. New prospects. I'm not going to say young because Jamahal Hill is surprisingly 29 years of age, which I didn't know about, but even still, that's a great matchup. Both guys on win streaks. Let's see who sinks or swims, the winner of which will be on a 3-0 streak inside the UFC and will have a ton of hype behind them. Both guys are dangerous strikers with knockout power in the first round, both coming off KOs in the first round. If you remember Daton Young's last victory, amazing fight to make. I'm looking forward to it. Jamahal Hill versus Daton Young, moving on. And Clinton Farias Diabriou can take on fucking the guy that Ed Herman just fucking beat. I don't fucking know. Like, there's a lot of these ones that I don't really care. They can go. They can go to Bellator. Their next fight should be with the Bellator negotiating room, if you know what I mean. Moving on. Brandon Royval in the flyweight division earned a dominant decision over Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott was winning, but Brandon Royval earned a dominant finish. He had a great finish. He put a statement on the flyweight division. It's not often we see finishes in the flyweight division anyway, so I'm surprised whenever we do. We seem to be seeing a lot more finishes in the flyweight division now more than ever, which is a great sign for the division because it shows that maybe it's going to garner a little bit more interest in the division. Tim Elliott should be cut from the UFC. That's 3 losses in a row. I don't want to see him fight anymore. However, Brandon Royval should be looking to take on the winner of Jordan Espinoza versus Mark De La Rosa, which is taking place next month. I believe again on the 13th or the 20th of the month. In a few weeks, they're both going to have similar schedules. Brandon Royval versus the De La Rosa versus Espinoza winner, the winner of which will then get a jump up the rankings. They're already ranked because if you're a men's flyweight that exists in the world, you're top 15. That's kind of how it works. But even still, Brandon Royval versus the winner of De La Rosa versus Espinoza makes sense to me. Moving on. Tim Elliott fight with the Bellator negotiating room. Casey Kenny earned a dominant performance over Lewis Smolka. I don't care what happens to Lewis Smolka. He's on a loss streak right now, I'm pretty sure. And even if he isn't, I'm kind of just done watching him fight because he's not very good. I like Lewis Smolka, but I don't really care what happens to him from here on out. I think he should be cut from the UFC maybe. Even still. And plus his record kind of stinks. Like, this ain't the women's fucking featherweight or bantamweight or flyweight division. You've got to have somewhat of a respectable record. You're letting down the team of the UFC here with a disgraceful record like that. But Casey Kenny, on the other hand, great finish in the first round. What we've needed out of him his entire career is a dominant finish, which he's struggled to get so far. He's now on a 1-fight win streak. Another guy who's on a 1-fight win streak, even though it looked like he kind of lost. Andre Ewell, coming off a technical win in a decision that was somewhat controversial, but then again, it was on the UFC 247 card, I believe, so, you know, the whole judging was fucked in that place. I mean, remember, John Jones beat Dominic Reyes. Even still, I'm not going to linger on that. Casey Kenny should be looking to take on Andre Ewell. I think it's a great fight. The winner of that fight will then be on a streak, a 2-fight win streak. Then we can talk about moving them up the rankings. I'm not a big fan of these guys on a 1-fight win streak. I don't even consider it a 1-fight win streak in my opinion. I see it as you've stopped your loss streak. You know? You can't be on a 1-fight win streak. It's not the definition of a streak. A streak is consecutive things happening one after the other. You can't have a 1-fight win streak. Get 2 in a row. Then we'll talk about jumping you up the rankings against some of these top contenders. But Casey Kenny versus Andre Ewell is a great matchup to make next. And then obviously, the guy that he beat, whoever the fuck his name is, should probably not be in the UFC. But moving on to the early prelims opener of Chris Gutierrez, had an amazing performance against Vince Morales. Dominant performance, completely destroyed him. Is usually a bantamweight. I want him to go back to the bantamweight division. I think he's a real threat there. He's now 3-1 inside the UFC on a 3-fight win streak. Another guy on a 3-fight win streak inside the UFC that's one ranking position away from him in the bantamweight division is Mr. Perfect Kang Hyo Kang. A lot of people don't pay attention to him, but he's 6-2 in the UFC right now. I believe on a 3-fight win streak, maybe 4. He's a dangerous guy. I'm sure he's going to be looking to get back in the octagon very soon after this whole sneezing situation stops going on around the world and that kind of calms down. Chris Gutierrez versus Kang Hyo Kang in an East Asian card somewhere, maybe a Chinese card when this whole sneezing situation calms down and we can go back to China safely. That would be a great fight to have. Chris Gutierrez, Kang Hyo Kang, the winner of which will then earn their jump up the rankings. That is the entire card, and Vince Morales gets cut from the UFC. Now it's the entire card. Match made. I've done their entire career path for them. I'll be waiting for my check from their management team that will be watching this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Like and subscribe. Click that button there. Yeah. Goodbye. Good night of fights though. Really good night of fights. But yeah, those are all the matchups I want to see next. See you later.